I was reading a story the other day about a woman who is a Western Buddhist, and she was over in India working with her teacher. And she and a friend of hers were riding in one of those rickshaw-like carriages, and they were unfortunately attacked by a man on the street. Fortunately, the only thing that the attacker was able to accomplish was to frighten these two women. Nobody was hurt. However, the woman, the Buddhist woman, she was very upset by the event taking place, as many of us would be, of course. So when she saw her teacher, she asked him, you know, what would have been the appropriate Buddhist response to something like that? So the teacher said very simply, you should very mindfully and very compassionately strike him over the head with your umbrella. Didn't see it coming, did ya? So I'm not sure if that's actual compassion or not, quite frankly, since compassion is all about the practice of being present to the suffering of ourselves and of others. It's responding from our heart with a desire to help relieve suffering through kindness, through care, through support, not necessarily with an umbrella, right? Mindfulness, being completely present, is a key component in conjunction with compassion, because it helps us become aware of and present to our reactive behavior, or better stated, our lack of reactive behavior. And it directs our attention to what is immediately in front of us, what needs to be done in this particular moment. Being mindful really helps us move beyond the indifference and the judgment. It helps us meet another person in that place of shared life where compassion can reveal itself. Compassion is actually a way of life. It's something that can be practiced all day, every day, in any given situation. It's a smile, it's a kind word. Actually, any heartfelt act that you give to somebody is compassionate. When you practice compassion as a daily practice, it encourages us to be kinder. It encourages us to be more loving, less judgmental. It also reminds us that compassion is not reserved just for people we like or just for people that we feel sorry for. Compassion is an unconditional practice, just like love. We learn to share it because we begin to realize then we have plenty to give away. And for free. It costs us nothing, right? We give and we share. Even the people in our lives that we find the most challenging are human beings just like us, who need and deserve understanding and compassion. Because everyone suffers, right? Everyone needs someone to lean on. And we don't always know someone's story. Ain't that the truth? There's a woman who's been attending classes during the week here for at least 2 years. And I pride myself on connecting with people, and I just could not connect with this woman. I just couldn't. I decided that she was unfriendly and not very nice. That's what I decided. Well, in the last couple of weeks, I found out that she passed away. And she passed away from terminal cancer, a very young woman, by the way. Had nothing to do with me, did it? She was struggling with her own issues, and I made a judgment. I'm not proud of that, by the way. Another lesson in don't take things personal. Just like Don Miguel Ruiz says, right? Do not take things personal. It's so important to stay out of judgment since we don't know anyone else's story. We have no idea unless they choose to share it with us. And even then, right, we don't know the whole story. It's none of our business. That was none of my business. And thank you for the lesson, right? Compassion can be experienced in everybody's life. It's that key element of heart-based support and can be applied, needs to be applied to ourselves as well as to others. It's that natural instinct within each and every one of us. However, it can be silenced and pushed aside if we lack that mindfulness, if we don't stay present in each and every moment to what's going on. If someone's in front of you, if you really are mindful, you can tell if there's something, right? You can tell if they need a friend to lean on. We're called to be open to that. It's such an important factor in supporting one another. Not just in spiritual community, out there in the world. It's also important as well in the ecology of the natural environment, isn't it? We need to be compassionate toward that as well. Ultimately, it's the embodiment of the realization that all life is one. Something we talk a lot about here. Because we know what benefits one benefits all. Now, first and foremost, we must learn self-compassion. It's that key ingredient of authentic living, a vital part of being human. Self-compassion is key to becoming a more compassionate person. Why, you would ask? Thank you for asking. It's hard to feel something for people if we can't feel it for ourselves. Would you agree with me on that? Jack Kornfield says this: if your compassion does not include yourself, it's incomplete. I love that. What a great reminder. It's very important to remember. It is not a selfish act to be self-compassionate. It is a necessary one because we can't give away what we don't have. We're called to treat ourselves with the utmost kindness, utmost care and consideration. I don't know, just as we would treat someone that we love wholeheartedly. And we are called to love ourselves first and foremost. If I don't love me, I can't really truly love you. And it's very appropriate for us to spend time and energy and patience caring for other people and being accepting and being forgiving when it's necessary. It's also, however, easy to be on autopilot and not be mindful. So we want to really pay attention to that. If we're doing so much for everybody else, we forget about self. That's not balance. We have so many distractions in our life, all of us, one thing or another, and we lose sight of ourselves. We lose sight of our soul's needs and desires. And that needs to be nurtured and loved too. And who better to do that than you? Who knows you better than you, what you might need? We are here and we are meant to care about each other, is not a question, because our survival, both physical and spiritual, depends on each other. It truly does. We're drawn to help each other, to be available for one another because we came from the same source. We are one. We are of the same substance. And we all need that compassion. There's no such thing as a small or a simple act of compassion. All of it makes a difference. Every action has a reaction, whether we're aware of it or not. It's like that ripple effect, right? When you throw a pebble in the water and it just goes out, you don't always see how far out it goes. You do know it goes out, though. And it's the same thing with those random acts of kindness, with those acts of compassion. Everything we do and everything we say matters. Compassion shows up when you find commonalities with other people. Have you noticed that? When you all of a sudden you get that connection and you feel that compassion. It also shows up when money isn't where you put your major emphasis. When you act on your empathy. When you're kind to yourself. When you're mindful and high on your list of behaviors is gratitude. The Dalai Lama once said, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. It's real simple. And here's a beautiful truth. Despite a popular belief that happiness depends solely on you, the way we achieve it doesn't just lie solely within us. It lies in our relationships. It lies in our interactions with other people. When you see someone in pain, take action. Whatever that means at that particular moment. The human spirit needs to develop compassion to be healthy. We need to respond to other people's vulnerabilities, and that aids in the process of our own healing as well as theirs. We all function from that compassionate instinct. It's an automatic human response, and it will kick in without conscious thought. Now, choosing not to respond to something takes a conscious act. If you find yourself, when someone's in a situation and needs some help, if you find yourself balking at that, you start, before you help this person, check in with yourself. Figure out what's holding you back. Not too long ago, I had this experience. A neighbor of ours, whom I don't know, had waved me down. I had just gotten home in the middle of the afternoon, just bought a hot lunch, was going inside to eat my lunch, but he waves me down before I get in my garage. So I said hi, and he asked me, he said, look, I'm stuck. Do you have jumper cables? I said, you know, I don't. I'm really sorry. Have a nice day. Right? So I go in the house, and I thought to myself, wow. I don't have cables, but I have a vehicle and I could take him to the store. Right? So I sat down, and my lunch is hot, and I'm feeling horrible about my decision. So I put my lunch down, went back outside, chased him down, and I said, look, why don't I take you to the store? You can pick up cables. All will be well. And he said, you know, thank you. But our other neighbor had cables, and I don't need them anymore. And I thought, okay, I did my part, right? I responded. It took me a minute. What was more important in that moment, right? Have you ever been regretful when you haven't helped somebody out, thinking it may have been a better situation if you had? Many times, and not necessarily always, I believe that we're placed in somebody's path for a reason. For the opportunity to share our humanity and maybe even fulfill a part of our life's purpose. When we have feelings of compassion or love for others, we feel better. It affects us as much as it does the other person. My lukewarm lunch was perfectly fine. had no regret that I went out to help a neighbor. And now I know my neighbor. At some level, we think that we want to be loved, and the truth is, what feels best is being loving, is giving and sharing. And part of what makes us feel more love for other people is that doing kind and compassionate things. So, in growing our compassion, we know what it's like, and I say we, because I know this is a room full of compassionate people. We know what it's like to be down on our luck, don't we? And we keep those experiences easily filed away so we can develop that more empathetic nature. And that may show up through volunteering or, you know, bringing things in for Corona High School or whatever it is. We have that empathy, though. Compassionate people are outward focused. They think and feel about people. They feel, we feel, how can I be of service? What is the next right and loving thing I can do in whatever situation you might find yourself in? Because a major component of compassion is giving back, even in the smallest ways. When we take action, when we take any action, we'll feel so much more love in return. And here's a hot tip for you. If you are seeking happiness, you won't be near as happy as you would if you are pursuing generosity. Big difference there. It feeds our soul. And it feeds their soul too. It's never a one-way street. Carolyn Mace wrote this: nothing about being human is as simple as just say yes. We are not compassionate just because we're meant to be that way. We learn to expand our hearts to include others because of what we've been taught, because of our own experiences, and because of how we see our relationship to God. How and why we care for others is a complex part of our spiritual evolution, even though we might attribute our nature to being, that's just the way I am. Yes, it is just the way you are. And we expand on that as we grow in our spiritual evolution. True compassion exists when you give your strength, your guidance, and your wisdom to empower another and expect nothing in return. One of the biggest challenges I think that we face is getting our mind to work with the compassion of the heart, marrying the two. We've got our logic and we've got our feeling. And the idea is to balance those. Because when they're in sync, we function consciously and compassionately. And Mother Teresa was a fine example of being consciously compassionate. She wrote this: love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. How do we put the love for God in action? By being faithful to our family and to the duties that God has entrusted to us. Whatever form we are, able or disabled, rich or poor, it is not how much we do, but how much love we put into doing it. A lifelong of sharing love with others. It's all about what we're pouring into that particular situation. How much love, compassion that we are sharing. We can't deplete ourselves of it. That's the really great news. By cultivating and expressing that compassion, we're focusing on and are opening up to a common sense of humanity. And we can only discover that through our authentic higher self. Today, you may not know this, but today our world is in need, great need of compassion. Stay present to your feelings of wanting to relieve a lot of the suffering that's going on in the world. Allow those feelings to carry you forward into action, whatever that looks like for you. It's an important motivational force for authentic living, and why being in service to others is so darn rewarding. While we're not responsible for the lives of others, we are responsible for honoring the social, ecological, and spiritual whole that we are a part of. We do that through acts of kindness, caring, and support, making certain to balance our compassion for others as well as our compassion for ourselves. Thank you so much for being here while I shared this truth as I understand it.